But let's just to bring it in closer, and I will answer you on Jess Phillips in particular, because those that are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible, they're not interested in victims. They're interested in themselves. Those who are cheerleading Tommy Robinson, not interested in justice. They're supporting a man who went to prison for nearly collapsing a grooming case, a gang grooming case. These are people who are trying to get some kind of vicarious thrill from street violence that people like Tommy Robinson promote. And those attacking Jess Phillips, who I'm proud to call a colleague and a friend, not protecting victims. Jess Phillips has done 1,000 times more than they've even dreamt about when it comes to protecting victims of sexual abuse throughout her entire career. And so just as I took on the criminal justice system and the institutions when I was chief prosecutor, I'm prepared to call out this for what it is. We've seen this playbook many times, whipping up of intimidation and threats of violence, hoping that the media will amplify it. Now, Jess Phillips does not need me or anybody else to speak on her behalf. But when the poison of the far right leads to serious threats to Jess Phillips and others, then in my book, a line has been crossed. I enjoy the cut and thrust of politics, the robust debate that we must have, but that's got to be based on facts and truth, not on lies, not on those who are so desperate for attention that they're prepared to debase themselves and their country. So this government will get on with the job of protecting victims, including child sexual abuse, mandatory reporting, accelerating the processes. But what I won't tolerate is this discussion and debate based on lies without calling it out. What I won't tolerate is politicians jumping on the bandwagon simply to get attention, when those politicians sat in government for 14 long years, tweeting, talking, but not doing anything about it. Now so desperate for attention that they're amplifying what the far right is saying. So that's what I say about Jess Phillips.
Forgive me for going back on Musk's attacks. You've described what he has been alleging as lies against Jess Phillips. This morning, he said you should be in prison. You're a lawyer. That sounds libelous. Will you take legal action against him?
My record is, it's open. I mean, there was nothing secret about being Director of Public Prosecutions. Every single case I prosecuted went to court and was looked at by a judge. I had an independent inspectorate, had access to every single file of every case anytime he or she wanted, and I was overseen by the Attorney General, which for 3 of the 5 years was a Tory Attorney General. So that record, I mean, and so in a sense, rather than me trying to say any more about what I did when I was in office, you can access this material, you know where it is, you know what the facts are. But it is an important point that's more, the reason I've emphasised this today is because it's more, this isn't about whether I defend myself or my record, frankly. That record is there, you can see it, you can make your own mind up. It is something about the nature of our politics. Because once we lose the anchor that truth matters, in the robust debate we must have, then we're on a very slippery slope. And when politicians, and I mean politicians, who sat in government for many years, are casual about honesty, decency, truth, and the rule of law, calling for inquiries because they want to jump on a bandwagon of the far right, then that affects politics, because a robust debate can only be based on the true facts. And that's why this is actually an important point about our politics, not about what anybody may or may not say on Twitter. That actually isn't the main issue. The main issue is what are politicians here doing to stand up for the things that matter to our democracy and the way that we have robust debate. That's why I want to call this out. because I think it really matters. And it matters not just to me, not just to the Labour Party, but it ought to matter, and it used to matter, to all political parties. And it's a sign of where the Tory party have got to, that we're even having this debate. Thank you very much, Robert. Can I go to, I've got Chris Hope.
Chris Hope, GB News. I'm afraid I must ask also about the grooming gang scandal. Critics will say it's not a far-right bandwagon issue, Prime Minister. The ICSA report looked at just 6 towns where grooming gangs were operating. Rochdale got 1 mention in 400 pages. We have found at GB News court report showing gangs operating in 50 towns across the country. Are you certain, as Prime Minister, it's not going on today? Why don't you order a national public inquiry to join the dots between 50 towns, not 6, barely mentioned in the J report? Are you afraid it might expose failings as your role as a DPP? And that's why Elon Musk says, were you complicit in the rape of Britain? You have not. To go after the far right on this does not go to the heart of the problem.
No. Look, Chris, look, on my record, I think you were actually covering crime when I was DPP. You were quizzing me at the time for The Telegraph as the crime correspondent, I think for the entire 5 years, if I'm right. And quite rightly, too. I'm not complaining in the slightest. But you looked at my record for 5 years with me as I was doing the job, facing your questions. You've got access to all of the material. So, in a sense, you can look at it. I've set out what I did. I actually changed the system because I could see some of the things that were going wrong. I wasn't prepared. Unlike some Tory politicians, I'm not tweeting about it or talking about it. I got on with changing it. In relation to the serious point you do make, because this is the victims here suffered terrible abuse, unthinkable, unspeakable, genuinely sickening abuse, and then they weren't listened to. That has to be taken seriously. We have to do everything we possibly can to make sure that never happens again. That's why I made the changes I did within criminal justice. Among the reasons I came into politics was because I felt that it couldn't all be done within the criminal justice sphere alone. It had to be done more broadly. On the question of this sort of call for an ever-increasing number of reviews, there have been a lot of reviews, including localised reviews, including into Oldham, for example. The Mayor of Manchester did his review, and the J report was intended to look at the different types of exploitation that went on. It was a comprehensive review. What Professor J said was really important there, and because I completely agree, which is this doesn't need more consultation. It doesn't need more research. It just needs action. There have been many, many reviews, this constant asking for a further review. No stone should be left unturned. But frankly, it's time for action. Get on with it. Why didn't the last government implement the J requirements? You've got to answer that question. For 10 years we've had reviews and reports. Did they act? No. They're now tweeting and talking about what they think should have been done. I've got some pretty basic questions to answer in relation to that, in my view. Thank you very much.
You say the sort of language Elon Musk uses matters to democracy here and has a serious negative impact on it. Musk is in a couple of weeks' time going to be a senior member of the US administration led by Donald Trump. So are you taking this as direct attack from his administration, and will you ask Trump to tone it down?
I'm actually making a more general point. I'm not going to individualise this to Elon Musk or anybody else. I'm making more because actually I'm very concerned about where the Tory party is going on this in this country, because they are not. I think only a few months ago it would have been unthinkable for things to have been said about Jess Phillips that was said recently, without all political parties and the leader of the opposition calling it out in terms. I genuinely believe that. I don't think it was that long ago that you would have all expected that reaction. You'd have all been challenging the leader of the opposition. Will you denounce this? This isn't fair, because it's put a member of Parliament, my member of Parliament, at risk. That's not good. That's why I say a line's been crossed. So this isn't about America or Musk. I'm talking about our politics. I'm talking about the responsibility that our politicians have in calling this out for what it is and distancing themselves and condemning it. Because if you're not prepared to stand up as a Tory MP and denounce what's been said about Jess Phillips, who's now had threats made to her, then you need to seriously consider why you're in politics in the first place, in my view.